bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons. I'm here with our regular cast of characters. We're going to be talking about the Edmonton Oilers. We're getting very, very close to the regular season starting. We're still in the middle of preseason. It's been up and down a little bit, but for the most part, the Oilers look pretty good. So we're going to welcome in everybody to talk a little bit about preseason and then what to expect for the regular season. Colton Pankiw is with us. Colton, how are you?
Good, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing really good. How are you? Julian Mongillo is with us down in the corner. I guess depending on where you're looking at this video, Julian's down there. Hey, Julian, how are you?
I'm good, guys. Good to be on back again. And we're just counting down the days now. 7 days away.
It's getting close. I wonder if I should say, how are you doing twice? Because I said it to Colton twice for whatever reason. I said, how you doing? And then Brian Swane's with us. Brian, how are you?
Doing good, Jim.
Good. So we're going to talk a handful of comments, but one of the things we've added to this discussion tonight, last minute, was the comments made by Connor McDavid at the end of last night's, I guess, when it was we record this. For people who watch this, it'll be 2 days ago. The game against the Calgary Flames, where the Oilers made a comeback. They were down 3-0, fought their way back into the game, 1-4-3. But McDavid didn't really talk so much about the game as much as he talked about the play on the 3-3 tying goal, where he was driving the outside and then wound up kind of crashing into Jacob Markstrom. He was asked about this and said, what did you think of the play? Because as everybody knows, who's a Connor McDavid fan or has watched the Oilers closely, it's eerily similar to something that happened where it was kind of threatening his career. Mark Giordano play, even in Philadelphia when he first came into the league, right? He has this tendency to drive straight to the net or drive straight for the goal. And oftentimes he's taken out by people. So I'll start with you, Colton. His comments were very matter of fact. He doesn't call people out very often. He doesn't really whine or complain very often. But in this case, he called out both the officiating and Chris Tanev on that play. What did you make of his comments after the game?
Well, I like that he's kind of getting away from just the robotic answers and maybe sticking up for himself a bit more this year. But I know I won't be in. I know most Oilers fans won't agree with me, but I think, I look at the play and I don't think there's any intent on Tanev's part. Now I get what he's saying about it should be a penalty, but I think it's one of those things that maybe he does have to be a bit more careful, just because I see defenders like they got to try and stop him somehow, right? And you can't just let a guy drive to your net. So it's kind of one of those things, like, what do they do? I don't think Tanev by any means is trying to hurt him. So it's interesting. I think it should be a penalty, but I mean, if McDavid gets hurt there and the Oilers get a 2-minute power play, it's obviously not a very good turnout. So I think it's maybe something that, not to stay away from. Obviously he's going to keep doing it, but it is a bit of a dangerous play.
Yeah, I should probably clarify when McDavid talked about this. For those that never saw the post-game comments, he basically said, I'm driving to the net there. I'm in control. I'm not trying to take out the goalie. I'm not trying to take myself out of the play. But when the stick comes in there and it's kind of loosey-goosey, he didn't say that Tanev intentionally tried to take him out. It wasn't like on purpose where he's trying to rub him out of the play or hurt him or anything like that. He just sort of alluded to the fact that he was not very careful. It was a reckless play. It just wasn't very smart. And Markstrom doesn't want him blowing in there and taking him out. And basically the defenseman's the only person on that play who's not getting hurt by this thing. And so McDavid didn't like it. He just was like, you know what, this is not how I would have done that. And it doesn't look good. Julian, what do you think? Like, is it interesting that he's saying this already? Preseason, regular season hasn't even started yet. The games don't mean anything. Is he talking more about himself and just the ability to stay safe? Or is he talking about how it needs to get out of the game? Like, what do you think he was getting at with those comments?
Well, it was a little bit of eerie moments, I'm sure, when he went when the collision happened, for fans. But I think that, it's at the end of the day, it's an errant stick, and the defenseman or the defending player always has to be, aware of where their stick's going at all times, even if, you're getting hit, the one getting hit, even and your stick comes up, right? It's going to be a high sticking penalty. So I think that's more what Connor was saying, was just, he's got to be more aware of where he's putting that stick. I don't think it was intentional by any means, obviously, but when a guy that fast is coming in on you, you don't got much time to think or, get yourself in a good defensive position, right? So you're almost just ready to scramble and do whatever you can to keep him away from your net there. But I think it's good to see him, speak out like the way Colton said. And, he hasn't been as vocal often. And I think that shows his leadership, his maturity. And I think it also sets the tone. This is a preseason game, but it sets the tone for him going to the regular season. If he's the face of the league really. And, you got to protect your players and, maybe the league says, hey, wake up on this, or maybe that's something they can, look at more, moving forward and just in terms of player safety.
I found it very interesting when he made the comments that he was very careful in how he made them. He talked about the fact that, he's taken out his own goalie. Right. Now imagine the shoe on the other foot had Jacob Markstrom got hurt there. Right. If Connor McDavid's fine, but Markstrom's hurt. And seriously, how did Flames fans look at that play? Right. Like everybody, I don't know if Calgary's all whining about McDavid saying anything. I haven't seen that at all, but I can only imagine how that looks. Brian, what did you think of the play? What did you think of the comments? Is he right, wrong? Is it a good thing to be doing?
There's a lot to unpack with this. Got to give a shout out to this to Jason Strudwick on TSN 1260. You kind of made, and of course, former defenseman who might be able to relate to the position that Nevin was in on that play, and kind of was along the lines of what Colton was suggesting. I don't think there was any ill intent. I think when you're dealing with a player of McDavid's skill and speed, guys are just going to get caught up position, and then that's what happened there. What really struck me most about this, though, is and you guys have talked about this, his comments post game. I thought that was, as you say, we're seeing more maturity, maybe more confidence to speak up for himself. And that's, I think it's fascinating to watch, because I think of a lot of the other superstars that have come before him, the Sidney Crosbys, the Mario Lemieux, the Mark Messier's, not Messier, but Gretzky. Messier was never afraid to speak up. You can see the evolution in these guys. There was the moments when they were kind of the quiet, as Colton said, give the robotic answers when they first start up. And then there's like this moment when they just kind of transform into the face of the league, who's not afraid to say what's on his mind. And I got to imagine too, given the situation in Calgary a couple of years ago when he got hurt, I mean, he's probably like a little bit, vision's going through that again. Exactly. So you can understand why he would be upset. And I don't know what the NHL does. How do you officiate? What do you do in that play? How do you make this more safe? Because you're right too. Markstrom also could have got hurt.
Yeah. Well, to me, you just call the play. You call.
It's a penalty.
There wasn't even a penalty called. In fact, they went to review the goal to see if it should stand, right? Like that's how backwards it was, right? Calgary tried to get the goal taken away because he had gone barreling into the goaltender, right? Like I understand, but like it wasn't even a penalty in the referee's eyes. And I think that was what bothers Connor McDavid, right? Is that this is a continual pattern with guys like him and Nathan McKinnon and these guys that are just super fast and really skilled. They don't get the calls. And that's got to stop, because when you've got these guys flying down there, it's almost impossible not to take a penalty.
Yeah.
You don't have to call them all, but call most of them. And I don't even think most of them get called when you're against Connor McDavid, right? Like, because if there were, and I understand the argument, it's going to be a power play all the time. Well, guess what? The Oilers have a really good power play. I'm pretty sure they'd love it if every call was made, even if 50% or 60% of the calls were made. And I think that's where Connor McDavid's going, you know what? It's about time that you guys call enough of these, that this is pretty crazy that I could get seriously hurt or Markstrom could get seriously hurt and there was no call. Like that's where I'm kind of curious with it, but we'll move on, because I was just curious to see what you guys thought about that. Everybody who's watching and listening right now, this is THW Oilers Overtime with the Hockey Raiders. One of the topics we've been following very closely, and I'll work my way backwards this time. I'll start with Brian. We've been following the Josh Archibald situation very closely. He didn't want to get the vaccination, so he wasn't really joining the team yet. They hadn't made a decision on him. It sounded like they were going to wait and see if he'd changed his mind. Now, all of a sudden, we've learned that the worst possible news, I guess the worst possible news, is that it got really, really bad. But right now, what we've learned is that he's got a heart condition called myocarditis, I think it's called. And he won't be with the team this season. Same thing that Alex Stalock has. So he's probably going to be ruled out for the entire year. He'll go on LTIR. I guess it sort of answers the question of what happens with Josh Archibald, but at the same time, it's not great news. It's absolutely not what you ever want to hear. People be upset about the vaccinations or not upset about the vaccinations. You certainly don't want anybody to be in bad health, regardless of their choices. What do you make of this whole thing? Is this kind of like, okay, it really sucks that he's not well, but at least we don't have to worry about this problem? Or would it have been just better if this was kind of decided before this all came out? Like, do you have an opinion on this? Where do you sit with the Josh Archibald stuff?
Well, I echo what you said. I mean, you don't want to see, regardless of where he stands on his vaccinations and his political views and stuff like that, you don't want to see anybody get sick, period. So, I mean, we certainly empathize with him for that. And I hope he can make a full recovery. It's concerning when you look at how Alex Stalock still is now, many months on from having contracted this. And I wonder if he's going to play again. So that aside, I hope Josh Archibald can make a full recovery. I think from that, you shift to what does this mean for the Oilers roster now? He did play a key role. He was the guy who was out there at the end of the games all the time, right? I always joked about how he was like the empty net specialist. There's a reason for that. He was out there in those crucial moments to lock down victories. Great penalty killer, really tenacious player. So they're going to have to find someone to replace him. I don't see anybody on this roster right now who kind of fits that mold, but there are guys out there and they may be available really soon too on the waiver wire. So it's not like he's an irreplaceable player, but they don't have anyone that I see stepping into that role immediately right now. So, I mean, there's different things to look at it but from a strictly roster lineup standpoint right now, that it does leave a bit of a void.
I'm guessing they're testing Colton Sevier in this role to see if he can handle it and if he can do it. But I'm with you. Like, Julian, what do you think? Do you think they look internally and they go, okay, good, we've got another $1.5 million on the cap that we can use at some point throughout the season before the deadline? Because if he goes in LTIR, that's basically what they're looking at here, another $1.5 million. Or are they going to look externally now? Like Brian's thinking maybe there's nothing on this roster that they got to find a replacement. Where do you sit with that?
Well, first, I just want to say, it's such crazy times that to think that something like this could lead to a potential career-ending, disease or illness, right? Which is unfortunate. So wish him the best. But in terms of what it means for the Oilers, I mean, and the way I look at it is we already said prior that he was a replaceable piece depending on what his vaccination status was. And it wouldn't be hard to find someone to come up and bring into the lineup. I do agree with Brian in saying what he brings is a very different element than what the team has already. But I don't think that it's going to be super hard to replace in terms of finding that elsewhere or internally. So, Sevier is the perfect example. I like him as a fit. I think he could elevate himself into that type of role, that physical grind style, kill penalties, out for the last shifts. I think he can be that, and he's experienced enough to do that. And we've seen a lot from Brendan Perlini, so he's not even close to the same type of player, but it's tough to ignore what he's been doing. So, there's guys that can come up and fill those roles, and it might not be what they expected from that spot in the lineup or, that type of play. But, if someone's playing as good as some of these guys are and showing that they're worth leaving into the lineup and earn a roster spot, then why not run with them?
We're going to circle back to the Perlini conversation because it's an interesting one. And I do want to talk about how he's played in preseason. Colton, I'll give you the last word on the Josh Archibald situation. What do you make of what the Oilers are going to do? Do you have any thoughts on, where this went, how it got here? Like, what's your thoughts on everything that's transpired here over the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, I mean, like the guy said, I think it's just an unfortunate situation, regardless where you sit on the whole vaccination thing. You don't want to see anybody get sick like this and then have a potential career ender on it. As far as the Oilers go, it is unfortunate because he is a good player. It brings a lot of energy to the team. Like you said, really good penalty killer. That being said, like Julian said, and we had talked about last week, I think he is replaceable. As far as the Oilers go about replacing that, I don't think they'll be in a rush to. I think they kind of want to see what they have with this group right now. They have guys stepping up in camp, like Perlini was alluded to, Colton Sevier. So I don't think they're in a rush to. I think maybe once the deadline rolls around or once you're a few months in, but I think they might just kind of hold on to that cap space for now.
I'm totally with you. I think that that's a decision that can be made later. And I think it's the type of player, if you can't find them at any point, you'll certainly find them on teams that are not going to make the playoffs. Like those will be the guys you can pick up for really late round picks, and they're not going to cost you anything because they're not that expensive to begin with, but they serve a certain role, right? They play that fourth line penalty killing role, short, like all that's, I think absolutely by the trade deadline, if the Oilers feel like they're missing that piece still and they haven't found it, they can get it. Let's switch gears a little bit to Duncan Keith. He's the guy we've been talking about like crazy. So here's the backstory for people that don't know. I can't imagine why I would need to review this, but let's go through it real quick. Duncan Keith traded from the Chicago Blackhawks. A lot of people didn't like the trade because of the money, all the other things, and his age and his declining numbers is what people say, even though I'm sure most of those people didn't watch him very closely in Chicago. He's now with the Oilers. He's one of the late vaccinations. So he goes to the US, gets a shot, comes back. He's got a quarantine. He's now with the team. He played last night in camp. I thought he looked decent. Him and Cody Ceci had a couple little moments where they struggled a tiny little bit, but other than that, I thought he looked okay. Colton, what did you think of, the whole Key situation and how he looked in the game against Calgary? There were a couple plays that he made that I thought were really solid that an experienced defenseman is going to make, and that's what we're going to like to see out of Duncan Keith. And then I thought there were a couple times maybe he looked a little slow and his partnership with Ceci looked a little rocky, but I figure that'll pick itself up. What did you make out of that game?
Out of the game, I didn't notice him a whole ton, which I think honestly is probably a good thing at this point. Like I said, my expectations aren't crazy high this year, but yeah, I didn't think he looked bad by any means. He didn't have anything that really stood out. And then as far as the whole situation, it was just kind of those comments early in the week that are just one more of those things that's kind of going to follow him with the big part of the fan base and just people around the league. There was lots of chatter on it, but he's entitled to say whatever he wants and however he feels. But as far as his play, I thought if he's able to play like that for the whole season, I don't have a problem with it.
And for those that don't know the comments that Colton's talking about, after his first day with training camp officially, he came out and was talking about his vaccination and why it took so long and he needed to make the decision. He talked about how he does a very, very efficient job of trying to keep in good shape, which means keeping his immune system high. So it was a more difficult decision for him, but he wanted to get it. He didn't want to miss any time. He wanted to be part of this team. And then he made a kind of a last minute comment about the NHLPA and how we had hoped that the league would back them up a little more for people who wanted to make more personal choices, which didn't sit well with everybody. There's a lot of people, and we talked about the polarizing Duncan Keith, right? There's people who love everything that he's saying, who are, anti-vax. And then there's people who are like, just another reason not to like this trade. So, Julian, what did you think? I mean, did you have any opinion on Duncan Keith's comments or how he played against Calgary?
Well, I think this is expected, the way he kind of played in the game after not, maybe been up to speed as much as everybody else has. And like you said, they're still getting together on a new partnership with Ceci. So that's going to have to work itself out too. And he even alluded to that in the post-game press conference saying, he felt better as the game went on, and that's going to be the case as they gain chemistry and they play together more and, get a little bit more acclimated to the team. So I'm not too worried about that. I think he's going to still be that stable guy. When you don't notice him, like Colton said, it's going to be better. I did see a lot of, maybe it was just one thread, but a Twitter feed with a bunch of negative blowback on the how the pairing's gone in the first game so far. So we talked about that last week already. So he's off to a bad start, I guess, in terms of that. But I mean, that's going to be the way it's going to be up and down all season for him. And I think he's the type of guy who will be able to put that behind him, no problem. And I think he has a long way to go in terms of the partnership and how they can improve. And, I think he's still going to be that experienced guy, like you said, and be able to just power through the team and whatever anything throws at him and take the negative and just keep rolling with the punches.
To me, I watched that game, and there were about 12 minutes out of the 60 that the Oilers didn't look very good, right? It was the end of the first period, and they got really badly outplayed. They played them very well in the first, and then they came back again in the second and third. Brian, did you watch that performance? Did you see enough out of Duncan Keith? We've talked ad nauseum about how he's going to have to play better than anybody could possibly expect to kind of turn some of those naysayers into go, okay, well, maybe this isn't that bad, right? Duncan Keith is what Duncan Keith is. Did he play well enough? I don't think one game's going to be the be all end all of this, but did he at least get some of those people back with his play, or has he still got a long way to go?
Oh, I don't think he did. I don't think he cares about the naysayers, and that's fine. As long as the Oilers get the results, as long as they get the W at the end of the night, and they make a deep playoff run, who cares what the naysayers say, right? And he's obviously, whether I agree with his stance or his comments or not, I at least appreciate that he's honest in his opinion. And I think that's reflective of the fact that he doesn't care what anybody thinks, that he would say that he's been around the block a few times. He's confident in who he is, in his way he is. And he's been probably hearing that for 3 months since this trade went down. So that, he'll do what he does. As far as how he looked, I didn't see much of anything that I would either say was positive or negative. The guy he's several days probably behind everybody else, right? Just because he was late getting started. So, and the pairing's going to take a while to sort out too. I think what I've been noticing actually is in the last couple games is it's been Cody Ceci who's been taking some more of the heat from the fan base. The people are not happy with him so far. So he might already have supplanted Duncan Keith as Edmonton's least favorite or whipping boy on the blue line.
Well, I was going to say it's going to be tough for both of them because they're two people who have brought in different situations and for different reasons, who are both going to be considered, I don't want to say guilty until innocent, but on the negative until positive. You know what I mean? Like Cody Ceci's coming in to effectively replace Adam Larson, and nobody thinks he's going to do it. And then everybody else looks at Duncan Keith and says, well, this guy's $5 point whatever million. He's
washed up.
7 years older, and they're just not going to do it. So these guys being paired together is really interesting because they got to fight.
Maybe take all the heat off everybody else.
They're conjoined on the hip there, and they're going through it together, dragging each other through the mud like an army.
At the end of every game, Duncan Keith's probably not putting his body. Did you guys each other, you know what I mean?
Did you guys catch Keith's interview at the end of the game at all, or no?
Yeah, well, I was just going to ask Colton. I was going to come around to him at the end here and say, what did you guys think of the comments he made about the power play? I thought that was hilarious. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I want to just say about his demeanor. Like, to me, that presence is exactly like what they need. Like, it's just so calm and mellow, and these are the answers. Like, I've been here, I've done this. We were down 3-0. Guess what? We fought. We came back. It was like nothing. You know what I mean? It was just so, and I think that's exactly what the Oilers need. So if there's anything you can take, just listening to that it spoke volumes to what I seen from him.
Well, I did get a kick out of the power play comments. Colton, what did you make of his whole? I've been around a long time. I've never seen anything like that.
That's funny, actually. I didn't catch those comments. But,
because they asked him about it and just how effective it is and how, like, it's just boom, 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 right? Like, it's not been perfect, but man, oh man, when it's on, it's on. And Duncan Keith is sitting on the bench watching this, just going, oh my God.
He's just happy he's not on the other end.
Yeah, that's what he said too. He's like, it's nice to have them on my team, but he's like, I've been around a long time. I've never seen anything like this. Like, that's the guy who's played for however many years.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it says a lot, right? He played on a Chicago team that, like, you could go on and on with the names there. Kane, Hossa, Taves, Sharp, like there's tons of guys there. Yeah. So, I mean, I think it just goes to say how incredible some of the top end talent on the Oilers is and how good their power play is. I mean, we know that from the past few seasons. And it kind of reminds me too, I don't know if you guys remember, but I can't remember who scored it last year. I think it was a power play goal. And they showed Tyson Barrie's reaction after, and he just looked like he couldn't believe it either. So I think guys are just really amazed at what Leon and Connor can both do, and it's just an exciting time to be an Oilers fan.
Well, and don't forget Nuge. Like, Nuge and Hopkins on the power play is gold. Like, we cream on him 5-on-5, and we don't give him the credit he deserves there, but on the power play, he's a magician too. He gets so overlooked because of Draisaitl and McDavid. It's ridiculous, right? So I'm not surprised at all these guys coming around going, this is crazy. I've played against it, but to watch it in person and to just be able to take it in, it's probably pretty crazy. Let's switch gears a little bit. Julian, I'll start with you. You mentioned him early, Brendan Perlini. We can't ignore the preseason this guy's having. He's got 5 goals now. I don't think anybody expected that. Most people figured he'd be competing for a job, and maybe technically he still is. But where do you see Perlini? Has he made the team at this point?
I mean, he warrants a good. My only thing is that it's the role for me is that it might not need to be filled. But at this point, I would kind of go with, who's going to produce for you. I think that's almost where I'm at. And, if you're not seeing things that you like out of guys like Turris and you don't think he's the guy, then that's a suitable replacement to me. And 5 goals in 5 games, I guess he's had in the preseason so far. And he's a former first round pick. We've talked about it before, and it's a lottery ticket play. And if he can be a, maybe 15, 20 goal guy on your bottom 6, to give scoring where the Oilers haven't really got much of the past couple of years from their, it's been all front loaded, all the big guys carrying the load up front. Right. So I think if you can get something like that, and like you said, worry about that physical play or fourth liner that you need, address that later on in the season, but you got to get to the playoffs before you make trades to help you in the playoffs. So I think Perlini, his offense it'll be a good boost for them.
Yeah, I mean, and I was really impressed last night because he was on the bottom line and he scored the first goal for the team from the bottom line. Like, that's exactly where they need him to be producing from. And he's done it all the time, and in all levels of every game, because in some of the games he's played top line, and some of the games he's played the bottom line, but he's been producing, and he's skilled enough to play with those good guys if he needs to. And he seems to have found an ability to work with a guy like Devin Shore and Kyle Turris and make it work, right? Brian, what do you think of his performance so far? And is this trouble for Tyler Benson?
Yeah, it is. It definitely is. He's been unbelievable. And I remember when I signed him, you look, and for the most part, over his first 3 seasons in the league, he was scoring at a rate of about 20 goals per 82 games. He had a little blip there where I think he had like 2 goals in 41 games in his last season, but there was obviously this scoring touch there. You saw it in junior. It's the reason he was drafted as high as he was. So I think he stepped away for a year, was in Switzerland, I think it was. Right now he's back, and he seems to just be, whatever it is, it's all clicked. You hit on the key point about this, Jim, is that it's where he's getting these points from, or where he's getting these goals from. You can't put an asterisk next to these goals. They've all come even strength. They've all come with line mates who, like, no one can say, oh, he's getting these goals because he's playing with Connor or he's playing with Leon, right? He's playing with Devin Shore and Kyle Turris. So, and he's done this, and that line hasn't even been on the ice for a goal against yet either. So, I mean, it's yeah, exactly. Right. I mean, this is gold for the Oilers. I mean, what they could potentially get out of him, for the rate for what they're paying, is this is one of those kind of contracts you have to make up for those ones that you overpaid, like Koskinen or maybe potentially Cody Ceci. We'll see. But to your point, yeah, I think Benson is in trouble. And the question is now, like, he has not played his way, and you guys know I love Tyler Benson, but he's not played his way onto this roster flat out.
Yeah, agree.
I don't see a spot for him. And now the question is, what do you do? If you put him on waivers, he's probably going to get claimed. You try and just trade him away for something. You send Ryan McLeod down because he is, he can still clear waivers. I mean, what do you do? I think they're going to end up losing him because, we know they left him unprotected in the expansion draft. So that's obviously a bridge they were prepared to cross. And so, yeah, I think unfortunately the Tyler Benson
was Holland responsible for that pick? No, right?
No.
He wasn't a Holland guy.
Yeah, that was 2016. So, yeah, the Tyler Benson era is over before it began, I think.
Yeah, and you talk about Devin Shore, and the big argument against Devin Shore is his goals for, goals against is the worst, right? Everybody's like, oh, he gets scored on all the time. The fact that he has not been scored on yet is interesting. Yes, it's only preseason, but still, I mean, that would be a great thing if Perlini could help Shore get rid of that ugly stat that everybody uses as their metric to say that he's the worst hockey player in the world, right? Like, it's pretty crazy. Colton, what do you think of the Brendan Perlini stuff? Is he a shoe-in at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I try not, like you said, it's preseason. I try not to look into it too much.
Well, what was it? Who was it? Ty Ratty? That we had not too long ago that did that in preseason and then did nothing.
I was just going to bring that up. I was convinced a few years ago that Ty Ratty was going to score 35 goals on McDavid's wing, and we know how that went. So I don't look into it too much. That being said, I think he's at least earned a look, right? And then how he does in the regular season, you'll go from there. But like Julian said, I don't know exactly where the fit would be. Like, I think it's going to be tough because I don't think he's going to get in any top 6 minutes, at least not right away. So I'm curious to see if he'll be able to, obviously he won't produce at this rate, but what he'll do as the season goes on. But that being said, he's definitely earned a look to start the year.
Okay, we kind of covered the topic I was going to go to next, so we won't dig on it too far. But I will ask this question. I'll go around to each of you, and you guys can say a yes or a no, and we'll keep it at that. Because Brian brought it up. So Brian, I'll start with you. Ryan McLeod, does he make the main roster or not?
I send him down only
because he didn't play. He
can.
was like one of the only roster players that didn't play against Calgary last night.
Yeah, I send him down only because you can. But he was the only guy who played, I think, the first 5 games too, which to me says that Tippett really wanted to get a look at him and see what they have here and what's before. So obviously he's someone that they want to see as much and get as much intel on him as they can because they have a tough decision to make. But I think you send him down only because he can be without the risk of losing him. And you know, you look at last night's lineup, you can see how this lineup sets up very nicely without Ryan McLeod. And Ryan McLeod has a great future in Edmonton. But maybe it's just not at the start of this season.
All right, Julian, I'll ask you the same question. Do you think Ryan McLeod makes this opening night roster?
Yeah, I'm with Brian. I think the organization loves him. Tippett loves him. I just think that, you know, that the ability to clear waivers without having to lose anybody or risk losing anybody. And he hasn't necessarily played him. Like, people have outplayed him for roster spots and they don't necessarily have a fit right now for him. I know they want to take a look at him and see if he can emerge as something more. But with the guys they have now, I don't think if they're looking to compete, they have guys that can, you know, be ready to help them get there now.
Colton, are you in agreement with that too? Or are you going in a different direction?
No, yeah, I think that was kind of one of the things when Holland came here that everyone was kind of excited about not rushing guys anymore. So I think they at least start him the year in the AHL and then see from there. But I wouldn't be surprised if he spends the whole year down there.
Okay, so let's do one final question before we close things off. And I wanted to make it kind of a fun question because by the time we record this next week, I've already been into the first day of the official regular season kickoff. So most people will have done their fantasy drafts at that point, pick their roster guys. When we're looking specifically at the Oilers roster, I'm pretty sure we can all be in agreement that Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are 1, 2, or whatever order you put them in, right? Whether you think it's Draisaitl at 1 and McDavid at 2, or McDavid at 1 and Draisaitl at 2. But I was curious to see what you guys thought or who you would take. If you had to take 5 Oilers on your team, say you're picking a roster and you had to have 5 Oilers, who would be the other 3? So if Draisaitl and McDavid are the 1 and 2, who are the other 3? And we'll just go general, very simple. We'll say points. I don't know if you guys want to get specific and go, okay, well, you need at least 1 defenseman or you need whatever, or a goalie. Brian, I'll start with you. Who would you tend to do a lot of research? So I figured maybe you prepared for this question. Who would you pick as your other 3 members of the Oilers roster if you had to put them on a fantasy team?
Jim, my fantasy team results will tell you that my research ain't worth nothing. But anyway, so we're just doing basic point scoring here.
Sure. I mean, you guys tell me if you want to include defenseman or not, and you want to say there's a rule you have to have at least 1 defenseman. So if you do 2,
I'll throw a defenseman in there.
Okay.
I'll throw a defenseman in there. I'll go Tyson Barrie. I think Jesse Puljujarvi would be my top pick of the forwards. I think he's just growing leaps and bounds, and you're seeing it again. I know it's the preseason, but he's looked dynamite on McDavid's wing. I think he's going to get at least 30 goals playing on that top line this season. Going to pick up an awful lot of assists too. So he would be the next guy I take. So him, Barrie, and let's go Nuge, just because Nuge is probably a lock to get you 60 or 70 points.
Julian, were you taking the same 3 people, or are you going to take something else?
If we were going a little bit more categories and category specific with hits and blocks, I'd definitely take Nurse over Barrie. But if it's straight points, I'm picking Barrie on that power play unit just because of how potent it is. And then my forwards would be Puljujarvi, and just because I think that his power, I think he's gonna play more often than Hyman on that power play unit. We've seen that through preseason, I think, and they like him, and it's been clicking. So why change anything? So he's my pick there. And then I would also take Nuge. I think he's gonna be, a downgraded role, not shuffling up and down or into center and wing. A little bit more stability with Draisaitl and having that connection. And I think he's due for a bounce back.
Colton, what are your 3 picks?
Yeah, I'll take Puljujarvi to Barrie, and instead of Nuge, I'll go with Zach Hyman. Just playing with McDavid, I think he could have a really big year this year, and yeah, I'd take Hyman as my last one.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to really, really bad radio, really bad podcast, really bad whatever, because we're all agreeing on the same things. But yeah, I'm with Barrie on the defense because I think he's going to there's no reason he won't keep doing what he has done last year. I do like Puljujarvi, and I mean, I shouldn't be the only one to have seen this coming when I wrote that article saying that he could be one of the best players from that draft. I think he's just figuring it out. Like, the sky's the limit with this dude. And we've seen it in preseason already. Again, yes, it's just preseason, but man, he's clicking. And there's something about the way he's playing. There's something about his confidence level. There's something around the way people are playing with him. I just see him having a massive year. And I'm going to go on a limb. I'm going to say Nugent Hopkins gets 70 points this year. So I'm taking him on my team for sure, because between the power play and you talked about Hyman, he got moved last night just to make sure McDavid and Draisaitl can be together. That puts him with Nuge, which is a pretty good combination. So I think you have a really good mix in your top six that no matter where you have Nugent Hopkins or Hyman, they're both going to do really well. So I'm going to have a bounce back year for Nuge as well. So he gets 70 points. So yeah, we're broken records when we're coming to these.
How about what we each told a sleeper pick for Oilers fantasy wise?
Okay.
And I'll toss out Mike Smith just because he could play a ton of games.
Yeah, although I haven't mind Koskinen so far. I mean, he's been a little up and down, but I thought he was pretty good the last couple of games. Okay, that's cool. Who's your pick sleeper wise, Julian?
I'll go with Hyman as my sleeper pick, just because, if he does get on the power play unit, and I think, him playing with Matthews and playing with a guy as good as McDavid, I think that he can really pump his points up.
Colton, you got a sleeper?
I mean, it's a big time sleeper, but I guess I'll go on the blue line and go Evan Bouchard. Just if he ever does kind of get some powerful play reps, I think he's proved in a short spurts that he's capable of putting up a ton of offense. So
he's looked really good.
Yeah, and I'm going to go with the theme from tonight. I'm going to say Brendan Perlini. That's a sleeper of all sleeper picks, but I think if he gets regular minutes and he even remotely does anything near what he's done in the preseason, I don't expect him to stick to this level. But man, if that guy gets you 15, 20 goals, that's just found money. Like, that's absolutely, and that would be way more than anybody could have possibly asked, and a huge win for the Oilers. So he would be my sleeper pick. Do I think he'll get as many points as the other guys? Probably not. But if he goes anywhere near what he's done so far, it's going to be very, very fun to watch. All right, guys. Thanks. I appreciate it. We're going to cut her off right there. For everybody else that's watching this, check it out on the YouTube channel, on Facebook. Go to thehockeywriters.com to read the articles that we're all writing about the Oilers now, and especially as the games roll on here as well. Watch the other content on the YouTube channel too. Put a comments in the videos. Let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. And we'll be doing a lot of game conversations now that the regular season's kicking off. But for Brian, Colton, and Julian, and myself, Jim, thank you guys, and we will talk to you next week.